Today, a topic of discussion is on digital products and online frauds, a journey from vulnerable to impenetrable. While we were selecting this topic of discussions, we had several other trending topics to be considered. Like AI was there, then we had Chat GPT, CBDC, inflation, embedded finance, and few more. We were told that a topic like online fraud is not that fashionable. Why don't you select a topic which is attracting a lot of media attention, or a topic which is chasing a lot of VCP money? However, we had a very different view on this. What we saw is that today, most of our activities are being done online. And what are we thinking while doing the online products or a digital platform? We are escaping unwanted messages. We are avoiding unwanted calls. We are worried about misuse of our online entity. Uh, every time we log in into a bank's website, we are worried whether it's a correct website or not. If we go to the ATM and try to withdraw the cash, we are worried whether our card will get cloned if there is some equipment which is being fitted there, which can just take away all the credentials. If we get a friend request, we are worried whether it is a honey trap. And when we get any delivery of any courier which is coming in and he asks for a OTP, we are worried whether it is a request money kind of OTP. And there are several other concerns which keep coming to us every day. So undoubtedly, the topic of discussion today, that a journey from vulnerable to impenetrable for digital products and online fraud, is a right topic. And we have today a very powerful panel. The people who have built industries, who have given several policy level guidelines to the entire BFSI industry, and their views would be very, very valuable to us. In fact, I would say that this topic should be discussed in each and every forum globally, to make the digital transactions safe. Now, today, the questions that we are going to ask are the questions that were discussed in the FIAX community. The next question is to you, Mr. Suresh. While in the industry, there are several risk mitigating tools which are being launched to avoid the fraud. Like one such risk mitigating tool is like asking customers to change the password every 60 days or 90 days. I was very surprised when in the community it was mentioned that an MNC bank which has launched an internet banking, and people are using that particular internet banking of the MNC bank for the last 10 years, and they have never changed any password, and also never a fraud happened. Now, at one end, people want frictionless transactions. Okay, they want zero frauds. So how do you balance between the privacy control, security control, and customer convenience? Now, during the policy advocacy discussion, when this topic came in, one of the FIAX community member mentioned that there is a regulatory guideline which is making it mandatory for the banks to change the password after a certain time frame. Now, what surprises me is, if this is a regulatory guideline, how come MNC Bank, has not implemented that? And do you see here a issue in interpretation of the RBI guidelines while they are implementing the mitigating tools? Now, this question is since you have been with the bank and you have been on the fintech, and you will have a better perspective of both the industries, and we look forward to your views here.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you for having me. Very good evening, and to my fellow panelists as well. I think two important aspects I wanted to start off with, right, which Mr. Sampurti touched upon. One was the identity. Second one was the authentication. I think the fundamental for any kind of fraud to be prevented is these two factors. When you start off identity, it starts from the time when how you onboard a customer or onboard a merchant or even onboard a wallet. So the ability to profile the consumer, whether it is through a minimum KYC or a full KYC, and the ability to understand the device which he uses, what kind of a transaction patterns he generally does, the geographical boundaries where he generally operates his day-to-day affair. I think there are enough and more knowledge and information is available, which is captured about an individual, and that becomes his profile. So that's the fundamental for any entity, whether it is bank, healthcare, any entity which deals with the end consumer, a B2C segment. They need to have these as many data fields which are needed about that consumer, or as much data about that individual has to be profiled, right? That's number one priority. Once you do that, that means you would have done, in case of a financial segment, you would have done your EKYC, AML, sanction, screening, whatever. So all of that you have done, and you have ensured that you got the right consumer onboarded in your ecosystem, right? So now that you have enough information, whenever there is a transaction happens, and you authenticate and ensure that, because you have the profile history of that consumer, you have all the identity details of the consumer, and you authenticate and say, hey, he is the same guy. Is he using the same device? Is he operating in the same geography he typically operates? So enough knowledge which is given to us is being verified. So the identity verification becomes such an important aspect in terms of preventing a first level of fraud. Now, this involves multiple steps of authentication, right? So sometimes the authentication involves a two-factor authentication, the way OTP fraud was explained by the India Post Payments Bank. Two-factor is one method of authentication where you send the OTP and then you enter the OTP to complete your transaction. But if you look at the next, the technology provides additional capabilities, right? Like, for example, a multi-factor authentication where it involves additional challenge factor for a a behavior change, or a transaction amount which is beyond certain amount. Then you ask for additional characteristics or challenge that person with more questions, so that you get the response and authenticate. So um, which is the acquired knowledge by you in the first phase of identity. So the tenets of a proper good governance in the bank, or any multinational bank or a domestic bank, is the proper identification, EKYC, profiling the consumer, knowing your customer well. I think that's the number one. And then validating the credentials at the time of transaction against the credentials he has given to you. Plus, over a period of time, you start accumulating the behavior patterns, the transaction pattern, the kind of transactions, the kind of merchants he uses, kind of payments he makes to individuals. So you are able to profile the consumer more and more over a period of time, which enables you to challenge you, whether, even for example, the bank which you mentioned, probably I'm not sure which bank, but they may have more history about you, so that they don't have to challenge you, because they understood that you are the same person who they have profiled you much better. Having said that, it is fundamentally important and a good policy, right, to change the password for many reasons. Um, and no, some places it has to be mandated by certain governments. Some places it is mandated by certain banks. Some good CISO or infosec players insist that they part of every application. They insist that the basic password policy has to be implemented across all applications. So they insist certain characteristics before even the application goes live. So which gives the basic governance of password policy is established. Now, having said that, now there is always a good policy, right? One is a policy, guidelines, recommendations. But the individuals, at the end of the day, the onus rests with the individual. Whether if you are not changing your password for so many years or so many months, uh, you are leaving a trail of digital transactions invariably for some of the fraudsters, and the people call it digital dumpster diving, people who generally gather more information about you from the social media and then use it against you. Probably they know your birthday, they know your female, your daughter, your son, and then they understand that whole knowledge about you, and then they try to use that to create sort of fraud patterns and then attempt to hack into the system. So it's a good practice. You have to make sure that the password should be reused. Third is very important. I mean, all of us are aware, right? Today, the number of apps which are today collecting as much information about you has proliferated so much. So you leave behind your mobile number, your card number in some cases, your email ID, your all the important data. We call it PII, personal identified information data. You leave it with so many places without realizing that that is the same data, that is the same mobile number used to receive your OTP, right? So, or for example, in case your OTP is not receivable in a mobile, you would have authenticated or you would have authorized the bank to send the OTP on your email. Now the email address is given to somebody, a third party fintech, to receive, access your email address. So that means effectively you're given to a faceless customer identity brand or whatever, knowing something, they're all going to keep your identity secret and things like that. So in general, to simply put, it is our interest to protect and make sure that the personal identity information, like Mr. Mallikarjun Rao was saying, the QR code is one such example, right? Where you don't actually reveal your account number and things like that. You just scan. So the system is sort of, I would say, the tokenize that account number and sends that message. And also RBI came with the token vault, where your ability to store all consumer or data with the merchants to be done only by the issuer of the card, and as well as the schemes and networks. So what it means is that the amount of information which you have earlier parked with so many fintechs and apps and e-commerce providers and large merchants now is now with the actual issuer. So these are the ways and means these protection probably helps you, even if you're not changing the password. But my good advice to the community is, please change the password as frequent as possible, even if there is no advice from the bank, even if there is nobody mandating it. I think it's the best practice is to change the password as often as possible, and not just for your banking password. Change your mobile email address wherever you have given the password.